All right, so I was holding club probably last Sunday, I believe that's what it was. And I was working with one of my clients and their dog. And what I realized is that we don't all use tools the same way. So, me, I kind of enjoy using a prong collar more than an e collar just because I like the ease of communication. So, for instance, when I teach any type of dog the prong collar, I do not teach that pressure turns on and you do what I tell you to do. In a way, I do, but in a way, I don't. Everything that I do with the prong collar, when it comes to the direction, the duration, and the intensity of the pressure, means something. I want my dog to do something when I give them that type of pressure. So, for instance, if I have a prong on a dog, and even if I'm introducing it, right? Normally, when I'm introducing it, it's really light taps. So it's just like with the e-collar, how you do low level stem first, same type of situation. So I'll do light taps, and I'll do in a certain direction. So if the dog already knows what I want them to do, right? So hypothetically, the dog has already been taught how to do their basics, their sits, their downs, their recalls, all that stuff with just pure food. I don't like to start pressure on a dog if they don't already know what they're doing because that's throwing in too many different factors. They're learning the behavior, they're trying to follow a lure, and they're trying to figure out why there's pressure on them in the first place. So when I've kind of gotten them to the point where they're able to lure into a sit, work into a down, recall with just a regular leash and collar, excuse me, then I'll go into okay, now we'll add prong collar pressure. I like the prong collar over the slip leash, I like the prong collar over the e collar just because it just gives better communication and better direction. So, back to what I was saying, when I'm introducing it to a dog, I use that prong collar pressure in a direction that correlates with the position that I want the dog to be in. So, if I want my dog to sit, I will give him that sit command. I'll give him that lure, and then my prong collar pressure goes up. So I'm tap, 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 tap. I'm tapping them in an upward direction because that is what I want them to connect with. This is what I'm asking you to do. So vice versa, if I want my dog to do a down, I'll lure my dog into a down if need be. But if I don't need to lure him, I'll go down. Pressure turns on, tap, 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 tap. But I'm going downward, right? I'm tapping them in a downward direction because I want them to understand that pressure turns on, yes, but the pressure is telling you what to do. Okay, so it's not just pressure's on. Now I got to figure out what to do. This is why I like the prong more than the e-collar because the e-collar is just pressure on that specific point, and they kind of have to figure out what you want them to do. Then you'll end up having to lure them anyways. But with the prong, you can kind of give them that direction. They can feel it going down, they can feel it going up. So I go up for a sit, I go down for a down, I'll go backwards for when we're walking, I'll tap backwards for slow down. If we have a forger that we're just like if we're teaching loose leash walking, we have a dog that likes to pull and go forward. Taps backwards will mean slow down, and then taps forward can mean either step up or a stand if we want to teach a stand. So again, my sit down and stand is going to be tap up for sit, tap down for down, tap forward for stand. The same thing can be applied to like flipping your dog into a heel, but that takes a lot more finesse, right? So you'll be bringing the leash around. But my key thing is that when we are at club, I was asked, like they've never seen uh, a prong worked the way that it's been worked, and I kind of thought about it, and I was like, well, yeah, because when we think about the whole concept of pressure on, pressure off, we think of it in an e-collar standpoint. And again, the e-collar is normally placed in one spot. I mean, of course, you move it around the neck so you don't burn or suffocate the skin. But when that pressure turns on, it's pressure in one spot. So unless you kind of have already taught your dog everything they need to know, so you don't have to lure them, or you're kind of still teaching and you're still luring, the pressure doesn't really have a meaning, right? So the pressure just kind of is like something that's annoying until it turns off, which is just regular negative reinforcement. But my negative reinforcement with the prong is also giving you communication. So I like it to have it to where my dogs understand the cue, the word or sound. Of course, they'll follow a lure, but if I don't have to say anything to make my dog move. So slight leash pressure gives them that communication to do certain things. So I can just keep my mouth shut. Pressure goes up, they sit. Pressure goes down, they down. Pressure goes forward, they stand, right? And they understand that not only are they able to control the pressure, they understand how exactly to stop it. And that's just a type of communication you can't really get through an e-collar. So that's kind of what I was this is what I had on my mind because that's something that it really interested me when we do these certain things, where I do certain things at club, and I kind of feel like everyone kind of knows what's going on, and it's really straightforward. But when you take a step back, it's like not everyone kind of learn that same concept the same way because everyone kind of groups tools into the same platform. So, for instance, I even if I was going the bounds of a slip leash, I wouldn't necessarily I would teach it the same way, like certain directions mean certain things, but the application of it would be different, right? So I'm not tapping a slip leash, right? I'm using that straight on pressure. So if I'm teaching that sit, it's straight up. I'm holding that pressure straight up until butt hits the ground. But this is the thing though. My whole concept of those two tools, the slip leash and the prong collar, is depending on the dog, depending on the dog's behavior, or depending on how the dog's personality is, I guess you would say. If we have a real slow kind of bulldogish kind of dog, a real lazy type of dog, the prong works beautifully. But I can use a prong for any dog, right? Same thing with the slip leash. If I have a real energetic, probably lab type dog, the slip leash is better because the asphyxiation point of it, right? So instead of tap 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 on the slip leash, which is giving pressure, but it's not giving adequate pressure due to the tool, I'm holding that pressure. Not hard, but I'm holding that pressure slightly. Same, and then the same concept applies. Pressure holds up, you sit, pressure turns off. Pressure goes down, you down, pressure turns off. The same thing applies, except the application is different. And I feel like those two tools are superior to your e-collar in the learning sense, right? So once you've kind of gotten those two things through, then you kind of move on to an e-collar because the pressure isn't necessarily the communication at that point. Now you're just doing regular escape avoidance training where it's like, hey, this thing is messing with you. I'm going to give you the information to figure out how to turn it off, right? Whereas if we're teaching, you can teach your dog to do all these things and work through that pressure. So that's just kind of something that was on my mind again. But I feel like that was really interesting to see how it kind of came across differently when I did that, and it was so foreign to a couple people in my club. But yeah,